Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer.
Well, who is he?
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer.
And who is he?
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer.
And what he do?
And it's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another fun-filled episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, board-certified criminal defense lawyer. Today we're going to give you a little bit of Melly update. YNW Melly, as you know, is in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, in the process of trying his murder one charge that he was indicted on for killing two of his best friends. But before we get to this update, this is brought to you by eSign.com. eSign.com, a very effective way to remotely do business. So I think I was telling you last episode about my grandmother who was in the basement. Well, we finally got her out of there, but guess what? She will not leave. So I had to have somebody do a restraining order to get grandma to stay away. So if she comes back, I can call the cops. So in order to do that, he hired somebody to do the restraining order, and they had to send it back to me because I couldn't leave my house because grandma's on his way over there. And so I do an e-sign document. You download the app. You get 3 free signatures a month. eSign.com is a very effective way to keep your grandmother out of your basement. eSign.com. I use it all the time for my practice when I have a client that can't come into the office or they're out of state. But you can also use it for just about anything else, like a bill of sale or power of attorney or a restraining order to keep your grandma, who might smell like cannabis, out of your basement. So let's get into Melly update. So we actually talked to one of the staff members that are part of this team doing this case in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And if you remember, let's just talk about what's happened in this case. You realize that Melly's been in custody for 5 years. This was charged out in 2018. He's accused of shooting his two friends that were in the front seat. Then they're accused of staging this to look like a drive-by shooting. If you remember, some of the bullets went this way and some of them went that way. So there was an issue with the death penalty. It was on the table, then it was off the table, it's back on the table. What happened was when they amended the complaint or the charging document, they didn't amend the notice for the death penalty. So their lawyers fought to have it dismissed, that part of the indictment dismissed, so that to take the death penalty off the table. Well, then the state of Florida they appealed that, and that was overruled. So now the death penalty is back on the table. So what does that mean? In April, Florida passed a law allowing for less than unanimous verdict on the death penalty, which I'm anti-death penalty anyway. I'm not for government-sponsored killing, but the Florida death penalty allows for execution of individuals who have committed certain types of crimes. Let's just talk about that for a second. Prosecutors trying capital felony cases, well, all capital cases are felonies. There's no capital misdemeanors. Or at least I don't think so. Can seek the death penalty after a jury unanimously agrees to convict the defendant. This part of the process remains unchanged, so you need a unanimous verdict to convict. But under the new law, once eligible, prosecutors must convict 8 of the 12 jurors that the defendant deserves the death penalty. 8 out of 12. That's 8 out of 12. That's ridiculous. If that threshold isn't met, then the jury's recommendation will be life. So if you got 7 out of 12, it's life. I think it's when you have a death penalty, it is so grave and it's such a dramatic ask of our government to kill another citizen. I don't care what they did. I think it should have to meet the highest standard. The decision then moves on to the trial judge, who will then later issue the decision. So he basically just rubber stamps the jury. If a jury recommends the death sentence, the trial judge then has the discretion to determine if they will issue a death or life sentence. The judge must then justify the reasoning in a well-written-out memorandum. One of the things that, anytime a jury is going to issue a death sentence, I guarantee you in Florida or anywhere else that has the death penalty, generally speaking, unless there's something really compelling, a judge is not going to rule against that. So the Florida statute, I will read right from the statute. The court will consider a list of aggravating factors as well as the defendant knowingly created a risk of death to people, whether the crime happened while also committing or attempting to commit robbery, sexual assault, burglary, or a crime for the benefit of a gang. So Florida is about to become one of the only states with the lowest threshold. You've got, I think, Mississippi or Alabama has it like you have to have 10 out of 12 jurors. And previously, Florida said you had to have a unanimous verdict in order to find the death penalty. First, the jury must find that by unanimous verdict, at least one of the aggravating factors applies. Then, whether to recommend the death penalty or not is a totally separate process. Then 8 out of the 12 have to agree that the death penalty is the proper result or proper recommendation. Or they all have to agree. 8 out of 12. God. So let's just kind of break this down a little bit to kind of talk about what Melly's facing. You've got a situation where you only need 8 out of 12 to recommend the death sentence. That means that it's basically 2/3. 2/3. We have different standards, for a criminal case versus a civil case versus like a family law case. Any kind of civil case, you need a preponderance of the evidence. Just means slightly more true than not true. Any kind of like order for protection or any kind of family law stuff, you're looking at more like clear and convincing evidence. That's like you're really sure that's really almost what this is, but God damn it. 8 out of 12, it just seems like not enough. And then there's beyond a reasonable doubt. There's no mathematical formula. It's whatever, and this is right from the jury instructions, whatever people use and a reasonable person might use in their most common and most important affairs. That's kind of the standard. The amount of certainty that would cause you to hesitate. The minute you start hesitating a little bit, that's, then you've got a reasonable doubt. The aggravating factors that they have to prove can involve all kinds of different things, particular cruelty, commission of a robbery, crime for the benefit of a gang. And these are things that aren't found in your typical case. And it seems to me that the list keeps expanding and expanding. And before you know it, you're going to have just about any case would fit with an aggravating factor, right? So when you have a situation like Melly's facing, and these are 2 cold-blooded murders, if in fact they're able to prove this up, the jury will be forced to determine, number one, whether there was an aggravating factor. And I think the aggravating factor, if my memory serves, was crime for the benefit of a gang, that this was somehow gang-related. And so that's the first thing that they're going to have to do. Number one, did he do this? Number 2, are there aggravating factors? And number 3, if there are aggravating factors, are there 8 out of the 12 people that would recommend the death sentence? And we're dealing with Florida. So my heart goes out to Melly's family. My heart also goes out to the 2 people that were brutally murdered. And remember what I told you all along. I highly suspect his co-defendant will testify against him. I'd be shocked. But we did talk to the prosecutor's office today. They're in the process of jury selection as we speak. This is a very highly publicized trial, very high profile for Fort Lauderdale, probably one of the highest profile cases they've had in a long time. And what's going to happen is jury selection is just taking a long time because of the publicity, and you have to be death qualified. That's the other thing. To be death qualified, you have to be able to say that you could impose the death penalty. If you have a fundamental, like I do, issue with imposing the death penalty and that you couldn't do it as a jury, you are not allowed to sit on that jury. But if you're gung-ho for it, then you can. So there will be cameras in the courtroom, and I guarantee you we will be reacting to some of the testimony. We'll be reacting to the opening statements. Those are always fun to react to because, as a criminal defense lawyer, I kind of look, what would I do differently? What do I admire in that opening or closing? So we'll give it some critique about the styles, and about the substance of what they're talking about. It'll give us a roadmap to where this case is going to head. And I think we kind of know already, don't we? So we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers with our content genius, Michael Rivers, without which I wouldn't exist. So we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Make sure you sign up for Patreon, sign up for subscribe, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter. We'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts.
Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away. Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away.
23-hour lockdown, police is at my god.